Perhaps it will make someone happy for me to discuss keepsakes that I haven't always kept for very long. A few times I was an autographed hound. To cover John Lennon, I used to think occasionally of what it would take to ask for his autograph. And I decided that the heartbreaking truth of the matter is it would make him dislike me too much. You could sort of get that from his public exposures. That was before I realized that he had already disliked me. But that's I suppose why I sent Clint Eastwood's autograph to Olympia. You see, it's not that I don't like Clint Eastwood. I'm just like anyone else. I have always really liked Clint Eastwood. But there's something about the fact that I've always been disliked. And he's just like everyone else in the same way I am. And having an autograph of somebody who dislikes me hanging on my wall because I like him was causing me some stress. I think the most troublesome of my keepsakes was the indisputably, genuinely, ingeniously composed postcard that I received from Robert Fripp. There was a second one, but it implied that it was picaresque of me to continue, and I gave the first card back to his crowd. Because it said something about making the copy, and I figured the copy was the card now that I had seen it. I just wanted to reinforce, at least I understood the meaning of sincerity. You could argue, as the Gurdjieff Society did, that I was self-deceiving. There was quite a formulation about that, in fact. I asked Pierre Elliott, what does it mean to lie? Because it seems sort of abrasive to me that a person would decide to lie. And he said, what would it mean to not lie? It would be a much more interesting question. And Wada Hodorowski heard about it and formulated how ingenious it was to depict myself as though I was not lying by asking, or so on and so forth. Or something. But Fripp composed his music and sort of coached me, not personally, but by ideas in circulation, to study with Syed Nasser, upon whom be peace. I dogged Zappa for an autograph. Mick Ronson was delighted to give me an autograph and a kiss. I would have asked Bowie if I'd met him. I don't know that I would have kept any of those autographs if I had them. I probably would have given John Lennon's to someone, thrown away Bowie's eventually in disgust. Things just got lost a lot of the time. Martha Gellhorn's letter had caused a lot of people some anxiety and anger. I let go of it in Iowa, hoping that it would reach the person at the desk I left it on, but I have no idea what became of it. I'm rather sorry I let go of that. The letter from Eugene Sledge was lost. Peter Gabriel's people were writing to me. I think that's still a surviving postcard, and I think Brecker has it, and I think Pam Horn has the stuff about the season of truculent machines. I know that some girl named Tara No One has a whole book with copies of everything, even the archives of Mount Desert Island. I didn't throw them away for fear of self-implication or anything like that. I'm just trying to shed the bore that Gabriel had become about what was happening. I know that Lynn Shaw took pictures of me with the tubes and the Roxy Music or something. Kansas knew that I was an abused child. I don't know if it was their responsibility to say anything about it or not. It's sort of hard to decide something like that. Well, John Stockwell's signature with the date might have been helpful. The postcard, I mean, the Kodak dated 1966 photograph of me in front of a garage. It says, I love Sarah Saran. 66 of me. That was sent to Jim Mars. Correspondence with Jim Mars was lost. It might be in no one's book. I think it is. A copy of Ionesco signed the Cremadani that I got at the Caliban store would at least be proof that I did. I don't remember making myself a royal nuisance to anybody. Tony Levin acted like I was making myself a royal nuisance. But arguably, I was just sitting and listening to them rehearse in CMU Gym. Peter Gabriel sent me some autographs, but I didn't keep them, didn't hawk them. I think I gave one of them to Treva Formby, and she made up a tall tale about my motives, which is just ridiculous. She always blamed me for lighting firecrackers off in the morning. I'm deaf. It was a foul pow, you know. But I don't think that there's anything all that special that I ever received aside from a letter from Martha Gellhorn. I gave Hotaruski the cheerful insanity of Giles and Fripp. I should say I also gave it to Don Ostro and asked for it back, and he gave it back. This isn't to square up about anything, but it's honest. I think one of the problems with Pittsburgh's review of the situation is that they don't think that being honest about some moments that were reflective of salvation among them are as true as the things that they cut and edit out, like the slaughtering head blows. For example, again about Don Ostro, when a gay man in Butler, who I think probably made films of me in Mortal Trauma, tried to get me to Ostro intervened and made sure that that did not take place. And I was not about to, but I could see it coming when Ostro intervened. This is only to be truthful about what sort of situations I was being dragged through as a traumatized child. I treasured studying with Syed Nasser. He was a deeply marble person. I used to like the fact that I played billiards with Ming-Na Wen, but what she became with like the crucifixion scene was just a little bit over the top. I still have Cine's Film Quarterly, in which I appeared, was given the last word on Oliver Stone's JFK. I had a letter from Cyril Wecht, a letter from Mr. Rogers, where he squared up about King Crimson and the Gutter Snipes. That would be nice to have. I don't think that was in no one's book either. You know, when you think about those things, you think, oh, he's a penis who would want an Eno's autograph. And I think one of the big problems with the ego tripping in the rock industry comes from the fact that I never did like the Beatles more than King Crimson. I did listen to all of that stuff, even the solo albums, some of them. And I never was able to cross the picket line of my sister's tastes to get into Led Zeppelin, although I liked Kashmir. Or the band, or Bob Dylan, or Joni Mitchell, which is why What's Her Name sort of inflates the story with name dropping Joni Mitchell, because name dropping Joni Mitchell really didn't mean very much to me. Jamie Moore reminds me of a citizen. I had a nice conversation with the denizen of Overy Lodge. I was inclined to favor him as a person. General Giant is in YouTube. It's interesting to see them play Proclamation. Power and the Glory, I sort of like that album. I had a stage pass from Aerosmith that I found. It wasn't like I used it to get backstage. I did sit in the orchestra pit. Richie Havens was an interesting very personable person. I remember talking to Napoleon Murphy Brock. He's the one who arranged for me to get Zappa's autograph. Al Di Meola had a good solo, the Tower Theater in Philadelphia. I liked Billy Cobham. Broccoli used to listen to Flora Purim, so I went to check her out. And Myron liked Philip Glass, so I went and checked him out. One person I really thought was pretty intelligent was that, not John Cage, no, the man who wrote Different Trains and Beyond, Steve Reich. I think somebody like uh, Owen Jones should interview Steve Reich about Gaza. I think that would be a really good idea if he's still around. Oh, I met Yevgeny Yevdoshenko. He gave me a copy of The Face Behind the Face, autographed Ivan Illich. And I had some exchanges with Erica Jong. I worked for James Child of Bowling Green. Had one encounter of a personal nature with Wesley Posvar when he dedicated the Miles Davis archive at the Student Union. He looked at me very sentimentally. I would say gently. And that was the building and the hallway in which Ralph Abernathy took my hand. Ryback took me to Luciano Pavarotti. Thank you, Mr. Ryback. I was approached by Rosa. Kathy, my best friend was Jeannie. Of course, Ray and Pastor Cronenberger were legendary Pittsburghers in my immediate milieu. There was some argument that the milieu was a detachment that had latched onto, to use Adson's words, a core that wanted to shake me off. You know, the way that the method shook me off. Their hints. But you do, whether you're deaf or whether you can hear, ultimately have to assert your dignities. I did live there. I was born there. I was enjoying the same bands. And the girls were sort of aware of the problem. It's not easy to know which ones were manufacturing the problem. When I was really estranged from everybody, I sent a card to Yoko Ono, which is probably used by her attorney to imply that they had not known anything until then, which is magical mystery cover up. I had Andy Warhol's phone number from Imelda Tuttle when I was about 14. Christmas my mother gave me Coney Island of Your Mind by Lawrence Ferlinghetti and a rabbit picture. I tried to call him, but I was too deaf to really explain myself, so I hung up. I noticed that Oliver Phone uses a phone for Andy Warhol. in his film. Linus Pauling sat next to me for a long time. I talked to him. I didn't know who he was, and so he got up to them speak. I thought he was just another person in the audience. But I had sat close. I was in the front row. So it was reasonable that he would be sitting there. But he wasn't like Toon's minstrel. When I tried to, after working hard all day, sit close enough to hear, he got up and get out of here, boy. He made a officious demonstration project of being encroached upon. Shudder, here comes that queer bait. That's another reason I don't particularly want the postcard they make so many gyrations about. Back. My mother said she never would have thrown away my $7 if she had known there was a letter from her father in it. Oh, there was. I remember what he said. I refer to it sometimes for its practicality. Laura says he scared her. He never scared me. He was a wonderful man. I had some books of his friend John Reinhardt. I gave one of them to the Magus, more out of respect than anything else. I didn't know how to define myself by it. I liked her. She was always giving me fair deals on books. That never happened in Pittsburgh. She was really very fair with me. I admired her. I still do. People I admire are relatively limited, but I admire Hala Abu Lebda. I love Martha Gellhorn too. The one scrapbook entry I still keep really very unconsciously is word I received from the family of Circe. And I have an autograph of Greta. I never felt it was a good idea to define yourself by others. I did hear from Claymont once, it's self-demeaning to put yourself where you're not wanted, which was the lewd patrol gyration of Carnegie Mellon. He pushes himself. In other words, when I was having a seizure and needed to go to the hospital, I was being pushy. So they had a right to lock me out, poison me in the eyes so that my eyes were dripping on my eyelids. It's an easy thing to say about the deaf, but to some extent I am to blame. They warded off handicapped people in their brochure, and I wrote a letter overriding that because I felt it was important to have some human contact with that individual. Because just becoming very wary of what was happening in Pittsburgh that centered on them. Of course, I gave the postcard to Ballou. He knew who I was. I heard once from Peter J. I was never interested in Roger Waters. I didn't realize he was going to get in my face. I don't like having fights with him. I don't know what to say. Same with Toon. I didn't have the slightest interest in getting involved with Toon or making myself unfriendly to him or anything else. I sent George Bush Jr. a picture of me as an infant at my father's feet. And it was only because we were on the same ship in the Navy. I had no cross motives. There was nothing ingratiating intended by that. It was just person to person generosity on my part. I wrote to Joy Chant once about her book Red Moon on Black Mountain. And I would have liked, I wasn't so much a Trekkie, but I heard that Leonard Nimoy used to come to our neighborhood. That would have been fun. As for people I would still like to have contact with and meet, well, I accept the rejection that I inevitably face. But Yin Hua 1236, I really like her. She's something else. There's a lot of girls online who impress me for their celestial lasciviousness, I guess is a Johnson Lee word. And I have been scolded as a priest who indulged or something. I was raised, maybe it was a jest of the performance people, to believe in consent and leave it to the girls to look after themselves, because that was the way my mother and my sister represented the dignities of dating. I know that I was really very disliked by Amy Shapiro, Leslie Katz's close friend, and by Matt Marthas, who she introduced me to when she left me standing there. But Raymond's real flame found me for a while from that circuit. And there's questions about what was going on behind the scenes with Zell and Abira Ali concerning Mount Desert Island. Ali seems to have been a code name for a lot, including Iran Contra. The people behind the AIDS attack, Amy Shapiro was very like Diamond Gullis. Teamed up with whoever the flight patrol were from the Islamic world on 911. So did Cliff Robertson, which is the essence of the problem in this case. The parochial opponent is very deadly. I know that Sergei Eisenstein was someone who's the deep teachers of Pitt Evening School pointed to in their film theory. Unfortunately for me, we didn't have a teacher of film anthropology, which would have brought out his friendship with Disney and Disney's proximity to the great dictator circle. He has a book called Immoral Memories that strikes me as highly likely an indication of Russian involvement with Pitt and Gail Burston in the Texas school book. Oswald going to Russia does not preclude the possibility that they were working together in a 50-50 split left over from the old days of the non-aggression treaty. Axis in America and Andropov's KGB probably did work together after all. Double agent or a representative is where that leads. It's a question. There's a lot of hard, down and dirty work that has to go into the toxicity of the inside job that was done in Dealey Plaza in Dallas in 1963. But Kennedy is enshrined, and principal people still do read him and understand him. I don't want to let go of the hope that people will put Vladimir Putin on his honor to live up to the best in him, because his self-representation is often excellent. I think it's difficult as somebody who admires JFK to combat all the forces that are work impinging on a leader of a very complex society in a difficult world. I'd like to think the best of the both of them. And I know that it can be very, very hard to. I say that knowing the criticisms of JFK come from learned people. Noam Chomsky has written to me seemingly effortlessly about everything but the most important question I asked, about the proximity of Gail Burst to the Z magazine. So, if there's someone who, I had contact with this angled towards that I have overlooked, I assure you it's just forgetfulness. I'm just riding the tide of an idea about sharing my reasons for divesting of certain things. And I really want to make clear, it's not that I dislike Clint Eastwood. I am like anyone else. I admired and liked him all my life. It's just hard for me knowing how bitterly he dislikes me. And of course, I've woken up about some of the things that have happened in Hollywood. Is there anyone else who I would like to? I thank you, Camila Believer. Oh, I sent her, Graham, I'm trying to, Michelle Kwan. Well, at the time I was inclined to arrange relations with a woman from the East because of the circuit of belief about John Lennon, which I was standing at. I mean, if you want to do something politically as a statement about this problem that has developed, I'm here. I mean, I'm willing to make a statement. And they said, oh, well, he's sleeping with these girls. Well, yeah, I mean, I like girls. But Midori Goto was the person that Peter Gabriel knew the pick was, so to speak. I didn't realize I was playing into Toon's game and stuff. It took me a while to work all that out. But the sincerity was obvious. I mean, the way that I followed each round and stuff, it was obvious. So was the backblade. Greta is a fantastic girl. Absolutely fantastic. The reason I didn't keep Ray's paintings is because they were his. I wouldn't. He gave them to me, but it was Raymond. You know, I'll hold them for you to keep them safe. They were his. You know, it's a principle. I realized I made it possible for him to paint those things. I realized that. But without Raymond, I wouldn't be able to say I had a best friend. I mean, Jeannie was my best friend, but the three of us were fantastic together. Who would I want to meet? You know, the people who are there, I would like to see get along a lot better. I have been told that Owen wants to talk to me. I'd be glad to talk to Owen. Um, I'm not averse to talking to many people, really. So it's not that many people would be very resistant to speaking to, but there are a few. Um, Deep down, interested in talking to. I wouldn't go crazy if Michael Kellogg wanted to chat. I guess I would like to talk to. Not many people I really want to talk to. I wish there was. There are people I could stand having a conversation with. I wouldn't be afraid or ashamed to have a conversation with someone like DeSantis. I used to get along pretty well with Senzo. Well, I'd certainly love to talk to Jeannie or my mom again. I mean, but I would have liked to chat with Melanie. That would have been interesting, but I don't think we would have had much time for me. RFK Jr., I don't want to talk to because of this take on Gaza. I just don't want to. It's not that I wouldn't profit from it. I wouldn't want to. I would be very resistant to the idea of talking to Bob Dylan. Very resistant. I don't want to hear judgmental things directed at me. I don't think it would be a good idea to talk to Syed Nasser again. He probably looks down on me for everything. I wouldn't want to talk to Al Sharpton. He's too opportunistic and I'm too vulnerable. I don't think I'd want to talk to Ichiro. I did get an Ichiro autograph. My admiration for Ichiro was very, very obvious. It'd be interesting to talk to someone glamorous from the circuits like Donna Edmondson or Francine D. Informed, intelligent person, just carry on a conversation with them. Free of nonsense. I don't want to talk to Harcourt or Ann Mitchell. I really don't want to. There's too much CMU media hype involved in all of that. I guess there's not anybody off the top of my head who I would ask to speak to if I could. I've made my views known enough that I'm willing to answer questions. Owen Jones would be the person who comes to mind most obviously, because at least his take on Gaza is reputable. I suppose if there was any one person who I would ask to speak to, just to reassure myself about my place and conduct and achievements in the world, it would be, if it was from media, Hala Abdulabda. That would be important to me, but hard. There's a certain point at which people put forward a face. Like Bruce Harrell would just put forward a face. I don't think I would get anywhere talking to Pamela Jayapal either. Omar might be constructive to speak with. I certainly like the idea of talking to Courtney. But this has gotten long, so I'm going to cut it short, give you some insight into how to approach me if you wonder. As for artists and painters living, I must say I'm grateful for what time I had hanging out at the Method. That dude can really paint. He's really something else.